I have to say now, dare I say it, forgive me, you're an artist, you're a great artist. I remember it and I love it, and I love you forever.
With tears in his eyes, Al Pacino finally broke his silence about Diane Keaton, the woman he once loved but never married. "I worked hard on that one," he whispered, his voice shaking, but not in a perfect way. Those words stopped everyone cold. After years of mystery, what truth was Pacino finally ready to confess about the love he lost forever? Stay with us to know the surprising details. Pacino's regret revealed. Al Pacino has spent a lifetime surrounded by fame, brilliance, and success. Yet when he looks back, there is one name that lingers with deep regret: Diane Keaton. He has now admitted she was the one that got away, a truth that now feels heavier with time. In several reports, Pacino confessed that his relationship with Keaton was the closest I've ever come to getting married. It was a love that seemed destined yet somehow slipped through his fingers. Pacino's hesitation wasn't because he didn't love her. In his memoir, Sonny Boy, he revealed, "But I've always shied away from marriage. I guess I didn't see how it would help anything," he wrote. "I just wanted to avoid what I thought, at the time, was the inevitable, an entrance to the pain train." For Pacino, marriage symbolized vulnerability, something he wasn't ready to face, even for the woman who deeply understood him. Close friends later revealed that the actor often expressed how much he regretted his choice. One friend told the Daily Mail that Pacino will forever regret he didn't make his move when he had the chance. It was not an empty confession. Those who knew him best said he would often mention Diane Keaton in private moments, reflecting on what could have been. He reportedly used to say, "If it's meant to be, it's never too late for a do-over." But now, that do-over no longer exists. Sources close to the actor describe how he referred to Keaton as the love of his life. Pacino's confession is not just about lost love, but about missed courage. Behind the calm voice and sharp acting lies a man haunted by what he could not bring himself to do. He had everything: fame, wealth, and admiration. But he admits he let go of the only woman who truly saw him. To understand how that regret took shape and why he didn't marry her, we must look back at where it all began, when Al Pacino and Diane Keaton first met, and how their story unfolded into a timeless Hollywood romance. Early encounters and first sparks. When Diane Keaton was cast as Kay Adams in The Godfather, she had no idea that the role would change more than just her career. It would alter the course of her life. It was the early 1970s, a time when Hollywood was bursting with energy, new faces, and daring stories. On the set of what would become one of the greatest films ever made, Keaton met a young actor whose intensity and quiet magnetism would leave a lasting mark on her heart: Al Pacino. At the time, Keaton was in her late 20s, still carving her path, while Pacino, in his early 30s, was just beginning to draw attention for his raw talent. They were both relatively unknown, cast opposite each other in Francis Ford Coppola's ambitious project. From the moment they began working together, something special stirred between them. Their on-screen chemistry as Kay and Michael Corleone didn't just belong to the script. It was real, palpable, and impossible to ignore. In a 2013 interview with The Telegraph, Keaton admitted, "I was really very taken with Al from the very beginning." It wasn't just admiration for his talent, it was something deeper, something that grew each day they spent together. By the time they began filming The Godfather Part 2, the connection between them had blossomed into romance. Their relationship began around 1974, when both had already become key figures in the film world. Yet behind the cameras, away from the public eye, they were simply two people discovering love in the middle of fame. Keaton would later confess in an interview in 2017, "I had a crush on him when we began shooting the movie. I was mad for him. Charming, hilarious, a non-stop talker. There was an aspect of him that was like a lost orphan, like this kind of crazy, idiot savant. And oh, gorgeous." Her words revealed the spell Pacino had cast over her. He was unpredictable, mysterious, and utterly fascinating. Pacino, too, remembered their bond with quiet fondness. In his memoir, Sonny Boy, he wrote, "We always had a connection. She understood my read on things, and it felt comforting to have someone who got me. We found a tempo and a temperature that was right. Their personalities couldn't have been more different. Her warmth and humor met his intensity and introspection, but together, they balanced each other in ways that felt both effortless and rare." What began as a spark between two rising stars soon grew into something harder to define, something that would follow them for decades. But let's find out how their love story evolved into a long-term, on and off romance. The Long Dance. For more than 15 years, Al Pacino and Diane Keaton's relationship moved through cycles of love, distance, and reunion. It was a long, complicated dance between two people who cared deeply for each other but struggled to move in the same rhythm. Their connection began in the 1970s, but it continued to flicker long after The Godfather Part 3 was released in 1990. Those who knew them described their bond as passionate yet unpredictable, one that neither of them could fully let go of. According to reports, their relationship was on and off throughout those years. They would part ways for a while, only to find themselves drawn back together again. Friends and colleagues noticed how their chemistry seemed unbreakable, even when they tried to move on. It was as if some invisible thread always pulled them back toward each other. Both were dedicated to their work, both fiercely independent, and both shaped by the pressures of fame, which often complicated their personal lives. Keaton was open about her feelings for Pacino. In interviews, she admitted she wanted something lasting, something stable. She had loved him for years and hoped that love would eventually lead to a lifelong commitment. As time passed, she grew tired of waiting. Eventually, she made a decision that changed everything. She gave Pacino an ultimatum: marry her, or it would be the end of their relationship. For her, it was not about control, but about finally knowing where she stood in his life. In his memoir, Sonny Boy, Pacino reflected on how he usually waited for women to take the first step. He wrote that women often had to initiate things with him, but with Diane, it was different. Their connection felt natural enough for him to take the lead. Yet, despite that closeness, he could not bring himself to make the final commitment she asked for. His fear of marriage and his reluctance to change what they already had created a quiet wall between them. Their love story was not filled with loud arguments or dramatic fights. Instead, it was marked by moments of silence and unspoken understanding. They loved each other deeply, but they loved differently. For Keaton, love meant a future together. For Pacino, it was something beautiful that he feared might break if defined by vows and promises. Theirs was a romance of intensity and hesitation, of closeness and distance. It lasted for years because neither could truly walk away, but in the end, one decisive moment would determine their fate. You would be surprised to know about the ultimatum she gave and how Pacino responded to it. The ultimatum and the breakup. What once felt effortless became strained as time passed, and Keaton reached a point where she could no longer wait for Pacino to decide. She gave him a choice that would change everything. It was simple, yet powerful. Either he would marry her, or their relationship would end. This was the moment that defined the end of their long connection. For Keaton, the ultimatum was not about control. It came from love, from years of patience and quiet hope that Pacino might one day see her as his lifelong partner. But he did not. Pacino cared for her deeply, yet he had always been afraid of what marriage represented. To him, it felt like losing freedom, like stepping into something that might eventually bring pain. His hesitation was not rejection, but fear. Still, for Keaton, that hesitation was enough. She later admitted that she had worked hard on that one. Reflecting on their time together, she confessed, "I went about it in not a perfect way." Her words carried the tone of someone who had loved deeply, but understood, in hindsight, that love alone could not fix everything. She wanted something more permanent, but she was also aware that part of her had been drawn to men she could never fully have. In another interview, Keaton shared a striking thought. "I didn't really want a man that I could have." Those words revealed something more complicated than the simple story of an ultimatum. Perhaps she loved the idea of unreachable love, of chasing something that stayed just out of reach. With Pacino, she found excitement and challenge, but also the ache of never truly settling. When the relationship finally ended, both accepted that it was over, though not easily. They did not marry, and they did not have children together. After years of shared laughter, creative partnership, and deep emotion, they walked separate paths. Yet the bond between them never completely faded. Those who knew them said they still carried a quiet fondness, a mutual respect that survived long after the romance was gone. Their breakup was not loud or bitter. It was quiet, almost inevitable, like two people realizing that timing can sometimes be the only thing that love cannot fix. After their romantic bond dissolved, how did their individual lives, feelings, and public images shift? Let's tell you about it. Life after the relationship. When Al Pacino and Diane Keaton finally went their separate ways, their story did not end in anger or resentment. It simply faded into a quiet understanding that they had loved deeply, but could not share the same path. Even after the breakup, both remained in the public eye, celebrated as legends in their craft. Yet, their direct communication became almost non-existent. They had been inseparable once, but now, their connection lived more in memory than in conversation. Years later, in 2017, when Diane Keaton received the American Film Institute's Lifetime Achievement Award, Al Pacino stepped forward to pay tribute. His words were heartfelt, recalling the kindness and support she had given him during their years together. Not only did he call her Di and compliment her on her hat, Pacino also recalled the first time they met at a Godfather cast dinner in Harlem and revealed the one piece of advice she gave him later in their relationship. "I remember leaving the house once, and I had an interview. And I'm very uncomfortable here, but at interviews, I'm even more uncomfortable, believe it or not," he said during the speech. And she was very encouraging, helping me along. And as I was leaving, she called out to me and said, "Al, you're going to be okay. Just remember, whatever you do, don't say you're an artist." And if that wasn't enough to make you weep, he then closed the tribute by telling her, "I love you forever." It was a rare public acknowledgement of the bond they once shared. The audience could sense the warmth between them, even if their romance had long ended. Pacino's presence at that event reminded everyone that some relationships, though broken, never truly vanish. During that same year, Keaton reflected on her past with honesty and grace. Speaking to a media outlet, she admitted, "I don't think it would have been a good idea for me to have married, and I'm really glad I didn't. And I'm sure my exes are happy about it too." Her words carried no bitterness, only wisdom born from experience. She understood that her life had unfolded as it was meant to. Keaton's focus shifted to motherhood. Instead of becoming a wife, she embraced the role of a mother with complete devotion. She adopted her daughter, Dexter, in 1996, and her son, Duke, in 2001. Her home was filled with laughter and love, the kind that did not rely on romance. Pacino, meanwhile, continued to live a life surrounded by art, fame, and relationships. He shared meaningful connections with other women, including Beverly D'Angelo, with whom he had twins. Despite his image as one of Hollywood's greats, Pacino often described himself as shy around women. He once said he did not woo them, a reflection of the quiet hesitancy that had once defined his bond with Keaton. Time moved on, and both carved their own paths, always connected by the past. Yet now, with Keaton's passing, that old regret takes on a new urgency. Death of Diane Keaton and reframing the regret. When news broke in October 2025 that Diane Keaton had passed away at the age of 79, the world mourned the loss of one of Hollywood's most beloved figures. Her death marked the end of an era defined by grace, talent, and authenticity. Tributes poured in from across the globe, celebrating her unforgettable charm, her unique presence on screen, and her influence that spanned generations. Yet, among all those tributes, one voice stood out for its quiet sorrow: Al Pacino's. For Pacino, Diane's passing reopened a chapter of his life that had never truly closed. Over the years, he had spoken about her as the one that got away, a woman who understood him better than most. But now, with her gone, that regret carried a new and heavier meaning. Reports described his reflections as deeply emotional, a mix of love, nostalgia, and remorse. Friends close to Pacino revealed that her death hit him harder than he expected. Even though decades had passed since their romance ended, she had always held a quiet space in his heart. Their story had been one of deep connection, creative partnership, and emotional complexity. They had shared laughter, art, and moments that shaped their lives, and now all of that existed only in memory. As tributes continued, people revisited old interviews, remembering how Keaton had spoken about their relationship with affection and honesty. She had once said she was glad she never married, believing it would not have worked. Yet, her words never dismissed what they shared. For Pacino, those memories now carried both comfort and pain. There would be no reunion, no chance to express what time had left unsaid. The door that he once believed might reopen had finally closed forever. The loss of Diane Keaton reframed Pacino's long-held regret. It was no longer just a personal reflection. It became a story of human vulnerability, a reminder that even the most powerful figures can be haunted by the things they did not do. In interviews and reports following her passing, the sentiment was clear. She had been a defining figure in his life, both on and off the screen. In the absence of reconciliation, what remains are memory, legacy, and unanswered questions. Unspoken truths and what may never be revealed. Al Pacino never married, but his life became full in other ways. He built a family through the relationships that followed, becoming a father many times over. His first child, Julie Marie, was born from his relationship with acting coach Jan Tarrant. Later, he shared a long connection with actress Beverly D'Angelo, with whom he had twins, Anton James and Olivia Rose. Their relationship lasted from 1997 to 2003, and despite its end, they continued to co-parent their children with respect and care. Years later, Pacino spent a decade with actress Lucilla Polak. Though they never married, Polak's daughter, Camila Morrone, openly referred to Pacino as her stepfather. a sign of the affection that still surrounded him. In June 2023, at 83, Pacino welcomed another son, Roman, with his girlfriend Noor Al-Fala. His late fatherhood became a topic of fascination, yet it also showed how his life continued to evolve, even in his later years. Diane Keaton's journey mirrored his in certain ways. In her final public interviews, Keaton spoke about why she had never chosen marriage. She said she never felt drawn to being a wife and had learned to love her independence. Her tone was reflective, not regretful. She had found her own kind of happiness, one that came from freedom, creativity, and raising her children on her own terms. Still, questions linger about the private sides of both their lives. Did Keaton ever record her personal thoughts about Pacino in her later years? Did she write about him in journals or letters that the world has not yet seen? And what about Pacino? Did he ever leave behind interviews, notes, or recordings that reveal how deeply he carried that regret after her death? These are the truths that may never be known. What remains are fragments of their story, scattered across time and memory. Their relationship, once private and imperfect, has now become a piece of cultural history. It stands as one of Hollywood's most poignant love stories, the kind that feels both real and unfinished. Al Pacino and Diane Keaton's bond now lives in whispers, memories, and in the timeless idea of the one that got away. What do you think? Was Diane Keaton and Al Pacino's story a missed chance at love, or exactly how it was meant to be? Share your thoughts in the comments.